All right. So Joe's here today. Joe Spector. He's a retired police officer, retired firefighter. Was it 17 years public safety?
15, a
15
little over
years in
15.
public safety. Ultimately, had an injury that led to have his path take a turn and do a lot of the things that actually we've been talking about within the Firefighter48 world. So it's really cool that our paths crossed. And Joe and I have been talking for the last week or so about how it's crazy how many mutual friends we've had and mutual people within this world. And it just made perfect sense to bring you on here. I don't want to give too much more because excited to see where this goes. And, but yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah.
Joe, I went on your website and I read, and I literally had goosebumps while reading your story. But for folks who have not been on your website and read your story, give it to us.
Whew. Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you for having me. Like you mentioned, I was a police officer for 4 years, and then I went to the fire department, climbed the ranks there for about 11 years, firefighter, engineer. Tested for captain during a very competitive process. There was about 25 of us who tested for one spot. My friend Ryan got number one. I got number two. He got made. Then I was acting as a captain with a promotion waiting for me from a captain who was in the drop. So in 2017, that's where I was at. Married, 2 kids, acting and getting paid as a captain, about to get promoted. Everything was like seemingly perfect. I had a really healthy, happy family, and we were good to go. And then, like you mentioned, I had an unexpected injury, which, to respect the time today, I think that would be another amazing conversation. But it was kind of a complicated situation with a lot of neurological stuff and an injury from the PD that got exacerbated by an injury on the fire department. But it was right when I was 3 months away from getting promoted, I got injured and my whole career ended. And yeah, I was at the worst possible time that it could have ever happened, and just very unprepared for it, and unprepared financially. So not only did my income get cut in half, but I ended up winning my battle with workers' comp to cover my medical costs. But for a couple of years, they were fighting me pretty hard. And so medical bills piling up, regular bills piling up, savings account got drained.
Jeez.
Didn't get this promotion that I had been hustling for a couple of years. Off the truck. Dad's no longer fire captain. My kid's drawing me pictures. Dad's a fire captain. Now it's like, wait, what? Dad's not a firefighter. The whole thing just got really weird.
Oh boy.
And then I started like what I like to kind of jokingly describe as like the year where my life turned into like a sad country song where everybody's dying and the dog's dying. That was just the start of it. I had my dog died, my grandma died, my best friend died. Like, he killed himself. He got drunk and pulled down in front of a tow truck. He was struggling with addiction and depression, and none of us even knew it, including his wife. I found out about that on the day that they medically retired me. So it was like I lost my job and my best friend in one day. And over the next year, we lost both my wife's grandparents. My mom was having some cognitive stuff, and it turned into full-blown dementia, and she stopped being able to recognize me or my kids. So I wasn't really able to talk to my mom about any of this. I couldn't even really bring my children around her anymore because of her mental state. And I just had a year like that where it was like every few months, my life just kept getting rocked. And my family and I coped with it in different ways, all unhealthy because we didn't expect that, and we don't get taught the coping skills for things like that. And my wife, we both speak publicly about this. I have permission to share. She coped by denial and drinking. And I coped by doing what we do, what we're taught to do, which is like, I'm okay. And I keep moving forward and not even stopping to process or acknowledge my feelings because I just didn't know how. And I just was like, I've got this. Okay, this sucks. I've got this. I'll keep going. And I just didn't know it at the time, but I became withdrawn and disassociated and depressed and in denial. And my children coped by not coping at all because I was a really fun, good dad who loved my kids hard, but I did not have the skills to help them navigate all of those losses that hurt them too when great grandma died and great grandma died and the dog is dead and dad's no longer a fireman. And my children began to struggle hard. They were so well adjusted one minute, and then I was on a first name basis with every teacher and every counselor because they were getting kicked out of class and they were having meltdowns and they were tantruming, and we were in all these different counselors' offices. And I didn't know how to talk to them about their emotions, and I didn't know how to resolve conflict with my wife. And so we began fighting a lot because of all the stress. And my family just, I went from being this like leader who was well respected, who everybody came to for advice, to the guy who's not talking to anybody and his life is just falling apart. And I was just, quite honestly, in retrospect, I don't really sit in the guilt and the shame, but I failed my family. I failed them so hard during that time period. I was the leader and I did not know how to lead them through that. And in 2018, during the course of all of that, I had a really, really bad day. I had to pick up my daughter from school because she was melting down and trying to tear the whiteboard off the school, and that diverted me from physical therapy. And I was in so much pain, and I was so excited to go to physical therapy, even though I was paying out of pocket for it, and it was stressful. Picked up my daughter, got her settled in, got called from my dad. He was watching my mom before she was in a facility, and she had escaped his house and was trying to get into cars on Central Avenue, like stopping traffic. And like she had just full blown dementia, as bad as it gets,
Wow.
like our patients that we run on, and was almost causing car accidents and freaking people out. My dad, he's like elderly, trying to take care of my mom. And so I get my kids set up on a tablet. I'm calling my wife. I'm like, I got to leave Sophie alone. Jet down there, help my dad, and I get my mom corralled, and she doesn't recognize me, and she's screaming at me and people are honking,
Oh
and she's just
man.
like angry and aggressive at me. I'm a stranger, I'm trying to help her. And we get my mom settled in, and then I get home, and I don't even know what about, but I began fighting with my wife. It's so funny, I'll get to the point where now we kind of never fight. We have such good skills because of what happened, but at the time we had a great relationship until stuff went sideways, and then
Yeah.
we did not have good communication and conflict resolution skills, and so we were fighting. And all of that, I just, knowing what I know about my nervous system, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, I went into fight. I didn't want to fight anymore. I went into flight, and I didn't really intellectually think this through. I just had to leave my house. Everything, like, I just started getting real tense, and then we were raging, and the kids were melting down, and my mom and all that stuff. And I just left. I peeled out and got on my Forerunner, peeled out, and just took off, not even knowing what I was doing or where I was going.
Yeah.
And I drove to a parking lot that I've never been to in Sunny Slope, some abandoned building, and I was just like physiologically activated. I almost like a panic attack patient that we run on. My chest was pounding and my heart was racing, and my I couldn't catch my breath, and I was like just a mess. It was like the alarm bells were ringing in my head, and I had just pushed for too hard for too long, and I hit my tipping point where my brain and my body said, we can't take this anymore. I'm not good, but I kept saying I'm good and just trying to push through. And I felt compelled to kill myself, like I had to. And it sounds, I've told this story a lot. It always sounds really strange as I'm telling it to people. I didn't feel like I had a choice. I felt like I had to. I like the way you have to pull your hand off of a hot stove. It's hot, you got to take it off. Like my brain and my body, it wasn't like looking for the easy way out and need a break. It was like no plan, no suicidal ideations, just felt like I knew I had to die in that moment.
Jesus.
And I opened up my glove box and I grabbed my gun, and I'm like, I didn't want to die. I was like, honestly, we've lost so many people to suicide. I wish for empathy for the people who do it. We always hear people like, he was weak. He can't believe he did that to his family. You're not thinking rationally when you're in that state. And I was actually thinking how effed up this was and how sad it was. Like, I'm going to leave my life was so good a year ago, and I'm going to leave my kids in so much trauma from this. I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I have to do it. It's not rational. And I was kind of wrestling with it, and I was like crying, thinking about the mess I was going to leave for my kids, and why I can't believe this is the way I'm going out. That's so messed up. And I put the gun in my mouth and put my finger on the trigger. Was just ready to do it, just starting to put pressure on the trigger, and it was 100% going to happen. And then all of a sudden, I can't explain why. I'm so thankful. I caught my breath, one really deep breath, just like when I meditate, just a deep, deep breath that like gave me just a millisecond of space, and I kind of was like, what the fuck? Broke the trance, was able to get the gun out of my mouth, and then again, I was mentally ill in this moment. It doesn't sound rational. I literally was like, I thought the gun was the enemy. I threw it in the glove box. I literally launched myself out of my Forerunner and just like fell on the ground. Like I can't believe that almost happened to me. Started crying and throwing up, and I was just like, help me.
Jesus.
Like I need help. Obviously, it's so hard for us to ask for help. I needed help 6 months ago, 8 months ago, but in that moment, I'm like, I admit it. I need help. I call up my friend Brantley Williams, who's a captain on Surprise, but he lives by me in Phoenix. And I said, I don't think I'm going to ever do this again, but I just almost killed myself. Will you take my gun? I don't know what is going on, dude. And he was like, of course. Drove to his house. He's so awesome, dude. We just like hugged and cried, and he listened to me for a minute, and I gave him the gun, and I called a counselor who I knew, and I left him a message. I said, Mike, I don't know what the fuck just happened to me, but I'm in serious trouble. I just almost killed myself, and I don't know what is going on. And he called me back. He got me in the next morning, and I talked to my wife, and I said, we're so far past the point where we need help. We need so much help. And I was like nervous to tell her that. And she's like, I'm like, you're drinking. The kids are failing. I just almost killed myself. And she's like, I know. I've been talking to this outpatient facility, the Meadows. I need help too. And instead of like resisting, it was like we both were at that rock bottom moment together. And she checked in or did all the paperwork and stuff the next day to go to the Meadows. I went and saw Mike Reams. I've had ups and downs with counseling, but this guy saved my life. And he stayed with me for 2 hours, and just like I started talking to him about what was going on and the grief from my job and the mom, and I started crying. And it was like, sounds so stupid now, but it was like the first time I'd cried since I was a little boy. Like I literally looked at him, I'm like snotting and sobbing, and I go, what is happening to me? Like I didn't know what was happening. And he's like, Joe, you're grieving, you're crying, you've lost so much. Like this is a healthy way to process emotions, which now I love processing my emotions, but back then it was like I'd never done that. And then that whole summer, my wife's a teacher. She was in outpatient. She got sober. It's been 7 or 8 years now. She worked through all of her childhood trauma. I was participating in that, learning all of the marriage stuff and communication and conflict resolution. I took all of the ambition that I had on my captain's test, my engineer's test, and getting a bachelor's degree in 3 years, and I put it towards getting my family healthy, getting healthy. I nerded out, man. I did every type of therapy, EMDR, talk therapy, ketamine. I read books on post-traumatic growth. My counselor was like, you need to slow down. I'm like, no, like I'm way behind. And started meditating literally like an hour a day. I did all these online courses. I just like was like, there's so much about my mind and my nervous system and my kids and my family and my emotions that I don't know about. And we just got healthy, got my kids in counseling, and I learned, this counselor told me what you don't heal from, if you don't heal from what hurt you, you'll bleed on people who didn't cut you. And I learned how much I was bleeding on my family from not healing from what had hurt me because I didn't even know or want to acknowledge it. And I got to hear how my disassociated, short temper, in denial, lack of emotional skills were affecting my wife and my kids. And I'm really thankful for that lesson, but it hurts so bad. And that's when I really was like, I'm going to learn everything I can about parenting and emotions and stuff. I'm so far behind. And I did. And she told me this too. She said, it's not your fault because nobody taught you and you weren't modeled this growing up. And you wouldn't take a firefighter and have him fight a house fire without putting him through an academy and then just beat him up with shame and regret if he did it wrong, would you? And I was like, no, obviously. She said, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility now that you know. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. That's what I tell the members when I train them. It's not your fault. Nobody taught you that life was going to throw you adversity and the job was going to compound it. And here's all these coping skills that can prevent these things that happened to me. Nobody taught you. It's not your fault, Chiefs, that you didn't have this training. Nobody taught you either. But now it's our responsibility. Now we know. And people are dying and families are struggling. It is our responsibility. And so we got healthy over like a year or two. My whole family just nerded out. Now my kids are thriving and they help their friends with emotions and the grace
That's
of God.
awesome.
It's, yeah. So that's part of my story. And I know I've been talking a lot. I want to pause
Keep
to see if
talking.
do you want me to
No,
keep going?
keep
Okay.
going, man. I'm hanging on every word.
And then as we started getting healthy, which took about a year, I mean, it's still an ongoing process, but now we're like thriving. And I just started reaching back out to my friends and sharing with them what happened, which was embarrassing at first. I'm not embarrassed of it now, but it just at first, it's hard to talk about these things. And then the first person said, you know, me too. I did that too, or so and so too, or so and so's family is struggling, or so and so's. And then it was like, it became more normal than not that somebody shared back with me a mental health struggle that they were facing rather than judging me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, so many people are dealing with this and we're not talking about it. You know, I was confused. And then it was like, I don't know if you know Dean Cook from Phoenix. Like he had some people that I didn't even know calling me because he was like, I was just like known as somebody who was safe to talk to. So some of his friends were, people were calling me and I was just like, started having these conversations left and right and just sharing openly and then getting more comfortable sharing and sharing the tools that had helped me, you know, all these things that like I learned in counseling, and I'm very pro counseling, but you don't have to get into therapy or have a crisis to learn these tools by any means. And then I started like almost like my phone was blowing up. It just kind of got really big and it was just like, I need to talk more about this. And then why are so many people struggling? And so I started kind of digging into statistics and then I got mad. I was so mad at my department and our culture. I saw that this has been going on so long that suicide is the biggest line. You know, you're more likely to die by suicide than any other line of duty death. The CDC put out a call for action. We know how slow the federal government is to respond to anything, and they're on it. Where was any of this training from me? And why are all my friends hurting? This is not okay. And now I'm looking at it like when Brett Tarver died, Phoenix was accountable and said this death might have been preventable. And we changed, we had Tarver Day in the academy after action report, changed policies like tragedy, tragic, and preventable. Maybe we got to change. I was an engineer when Brad Harper died, and it was like all the way out in Surprise. I had to sign an affidavit saying we were never back without a backer. Policy was changing, like even if the guys are asleep at 2 a.m, like I'm losing my position if I do it. One death like that is too many, and it's tragic. And if it's potentially preventable, we're going to change the way we do business, and we're going to prevent it. But if you think about all of the resources that we spend on preventing our guys from dying in the line of duty on the fire ground or getting burned, or police officers getting shot and killed in the line of duty, almost everything from policy, resources, training, minimum company standards, it's all dedicated to that, and it's normalized. And in the last 13 years since Brad Harper died, we've lost like approximately 800 police officers and firefighters to fire ground deaths and shooting deaths, and almost 5,000 police officers and firefighters to suicide in this country.
Jesus.
So we're 5-to-1 ratio, and yet we're training 99.9% on all of these things. And then I was like, and this is preventable. Not all of them, but most of them. If you give a firefighter or a police officer tools from the get-go on how to manage your stress, communicate to your family, regulate your nervous system, reach out for help when you need to, mindfulness exercises, there's massive amounts of evidence and statistics you can prevent these things. And we're not equipping our people, and they're dying. And what happened to me is normal, and now I'm pissed, and I'm going to start talking about it. And now I'm like openly talking to everybody, and that's when I started the podcast. And it was just like I was, and then it was like, oh, I'm not alone, there's lots of people talking about this, but we're just like, we're kind of not doing anything about it. And I just didn't understand why I didn't know that. And I was on the job for so long. Like, why are we not talking about this? Let's
Yeah.
say the quiet part out loud, you know? And then something happened. You brought up Mike Payne again. He's given me permission to share. Within the same week, our union chapter president, Mike Payne, who's one of my very dear friends, called me, and I almost didn't take the call. I was at ice cream with my daughter, and we were just having so much fun. And I don't know, something told me, I was not to ignore his call, I was going to call him later, but something told me to pick up the phone, and I grabbed it, and I was getting my daughter in the car, and I was like, "What's up, Mike?" And, you know, all chipper. And he's like, "Joey, And I could tell it was serious. And I was like, "What's up, dude? Are you okay?" And he said, I'm checking myself into rehab, and I've been struggling, and I'm at rock bottom, and I'm having a lot of catastrophic issues right now. And I need you to know that I'm going to cry talking about this. He said, I need you to know you taking me out to lunch and sharing your story with me is the thing that got me to be able to reach out and ask for help. And I needed to do this. And
Wow.
before I go, I need you to know that.
Wow.
And then a few days later, Forrest Kuntz, who's and he told me before he leaves, like, Mike Payne said, I want you to come, like, officially talk to our department on this stuff. Like, when I get back from rehab, we need to do something here. All this prevention stuff you're talking about, we need to implement it. And then our wellness captain, who's our wellness chief now, called me and said, hey, will you come do some, like, official training and talk to the PD and the fire department? And I said, oh yeah, is this because of Mike? They hadn't even talked. It was a weird coincidence that labor and management both called me about this without connecting with each other. And I was like, yes, like, okay, I will do this. And I was nervous because I had talked to people one-on-one, but I had never got, like, now I get up in front of groups of firemen and cops all the time. That's nerve-wracking to get up there and talk about mental health and suicide and do it. But I was like, F it, I'll do it. And so over the next few months, I, like, kind of developed this training and kind of officially took the stuff I was doing on the podcast for this, like, 3-hour training, and went to the auditorium and did it. It was amazing. And it was just like, I thought it was going to be uncomfortable, but it was just like the phone calls. People stayed for an hour after sharing how what I had been doing with them helped. People spoke publicly on that, sharing their own struggles, asking for more. And I went to lunch with Mike afterwards, and he's like, we need way more of this training. What can you do? How much can you convert this? Like, can we get it on our video training? Can you come in more? And I was like, now this is what I do for a living. But then that was a new idea that Mike had put in my head. And I was like, I think I could do that. Like, he's like, you need to do it, and we need it, dude. And, like, everybody needs this. And I was like, all right, game on. Like, I'm in this now, and I'm getting encouraged. And I had an appointment with Dr. Shukla, and, like, the next week for my cancer scans. This is interesting. And I told her, she had kind of listened to the podcast or been on Instagram. I don't know. She and her team had seen my stuff and were kind of, like, encouraging me already. And I said, I'm going to try and do what you did with cancer, with mental health, to the best of my ability. Like, so much of it is preventable. Even my stuff complements the reactive care, but we're getting kind of good at reactive. We need oncologists, but we need to wash our turnips, and we need to wear our SCBAs and stuff. Like, we need prevention too. And I know I'm just one dude, but I'm so inspired by everything that you did. And I'm so grateful. You've caught so many of my friends' cancer. Like, I'm going to try and do that in my department. She's like, go do it. And then I just created a bunch of training. I got a professional studio. I took creative videos. I created in-person seminars, and it started with surprise. And I did it right. I hooked up with a mental health facility, professional, like, and I trained all of their field personnel during the pilot, and 30% of their department in my class got up and mentioned that they unpacked a mental health struggle that they didn't even know that they were facing until we had this conversation, and we resourced them out. 80 something percent of them said that this is tools that they didn't have that they need, that it helped them. And then I did surprise PD, and then now I'm just, like, training a bunch of departments, and I speak at conferences, and the whole thing is, like, there's so many people like you all out there. I thought I was kind of alone, and I'm not. There's so many of us, whether it's mental health or cancer. It's a big, giant team of people who the time for ignorance and arrogance and ego is over. It's time to just adapt and pivot and realize that we have different threats now, and we need to leave things better than we found them for our kids and our departments. We need to learn tools and skill sets for prevention and reactive help. And I'm not really meeting any resistance on that message when I talk about it. Everybody's like, yeah, I agree. And I know he had Ben Dubin on here. Like, I was like, are you in my head? Like, we're talking about the same stuff. There's so many people. And
Yeah.
that's kind of my story. Thank you for allowing me to talk so much. I hope I stayed within the guardrails.
It's one hell of a story, Joe. Jesus. So, so obviously, thank you for sharing all of that. How did you transition into helping others? Obviously, you had some counseling experience. You were learning through your counselors, probably did a bunch of your own research and whatever. What was your motivation for wanting to help others? And how'd you go about it originally?
it just started with those phone calls and my friends telling me that they were hurting too. And then my heart started breaking and I started getting sad and angry for other people are going through what I'm going through and they could die and they are dying. And then I was like, I just started saying, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm just like we teach each other new hose lays or new tactics. Like there's tactics for when you want to punch a hole in the wall because your kids are tantruming. You can take a breath and remove yourself. When your wife and you are fighting, there's ways to resolve conflict. When you come back from a rough call, you can label your emotion and say, this is how I felt. Like all these basic things that I learned throughout the couple of years that we spent, I just started sharing them with my friends in like bite-sized digestible pieces. Get rid of the stuff that didn't work, share the stuff that did work, do it in a language where I'm dropping F-bombs and using firefighter analogies. And I'm like, this is how we do this with this. And this is how, like when you start, and it was just, I just started having people come back and share with me that it was effective and they wanted more of it rather than resistance. And then it evolved. And then it, it started with my department asking me to do it. And then every time I just would do something, more people would say it was helping them and encourage me to do it more. And then that is where I'm at right now. It keeps evolving and growing based on results. And now I'm very thankful. It's a second job that I never even thought I would have. And I'm gonna cry again. I'm back to serving my people. I think I'm helping my people more than I ever would have in the captain's seat of a fire truck. And I'm very grateful for that. And it's helping supplement the income that I lost that I would have never had. And I, I'm just really passionate about it because I'm not the only person who can do this. We need more of this. Like, no, this is collaborative. There's no competition. We need prevention, just like we need what Dr. Shukla is doing, and just like we need what you all are doing. Every side of 7 sides of the fire need to be attacked. Mental health and cancer, all of these things need to be attacked.
Yeah.
And I happen to be qualified because I was a cop, I was a fireman, I overcame my mental health struggles, and I'm a decent communicator and I got a good reputation. We're not doing prevention, and you don't need to be a oncologist to tell a guy to wash his turnouts. You don't need to be a therapist to teach a guy how to meditate or talk to his wife. So does that answer that question?
Yeah. So touch on that meditation. What kinds of things are you suggesting to folks when they're in a mental health crisis or coming up on a mental health crisis to not get into a spin?
Two things. Just like we do cancer, we do scans, like, right? Like a lot of us, like I had a mental health cancer inside me that I didn't even know it until I got this scan, which was my family falling apart, and then it manifested itself. Through mindfulness and tactical breath work and thought pattern redirection and awareness, which is just, there's lots of different ways to meditate. I teach a handful of just the basics that you would get in the Headspace app or the Calm app. Transcendental meditation, breath work, labeling meditations. There's a handful of different ones, and I just teach them with firefighter analogies. But slowing down and taking even 5 minutes a day. A lot of times, like I had my check engine light, and we're driving around with our dashboard with the duct tape on it. You can't see the check engine light, and that's so foolish. Yeah. When you pause for a moment and you analyze your thoughts and your breath and your nervous system, you get an awareness of what's going on. And I call that the internal scan. Like that's like giving yourself an MRI for like cancer. And then dialogue is the external scan. We're not used to talking to each other and saying like, hey, what happened? How did you feel? How are you doing? What was the high and the low of your day? So that's the external scan. That's where if I tell you, how's it going, bro? Every firefighter is going to be like, living the dream. But if I say like, what's the most challenging thing going on in your life right now? You would be shocked at what comes out. So asking your brothers and sisters and your kids highs and lows, that's how we scan each other. And then just like if you find cancer, you need an oncologist. The medicine is emotional processing techniques.
Yeah.
So I kind of try and teach mindfulness for internal scanning, dialogue for external scanning, and then a handful of the basics that you would get if you were in a crisis and you went to counseling, but just hopefully beforehand. You wouldn't give a guy a turnouts after he's been burned. You know what I mean? Give them, I encourage counseling too, but give these basic skills ahead of time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't know necessarily. It's not like a one size fits all is kind of what we've talked about. Because to your point, when you have a line of duty death, it's very clear. It's like, okay, we can identify this was the problem, right? And to the mental health side of things, it's weird because it manifests different for every single person. Have you like, what is your thought on that as you start to bring it to people to be like, hey, this the way that you seek help or the way that it shows in your life may look different for 10 different people. So to me, it almost seems like more of a challenge. It's not as simple as like, hey, we lost somebody. We certainly need to do something about it. But I feel like that's what I've at least seen from the outside looking in on in a lot of ways on this is I don't think it's been really clear cut. I think everybody wants to help, but they don't know how to. Has that been your experience, or have you given a lot of thought to what that looks like in the future?
That's exactly the experience. And so it's not a one size fits all. And I thought nobody wanted to help too. And then I started talking to people and I realized everybody wants to help. We just don't know how. That's why it's not our fault. It's our
Yeah.
responsibility. We just didn't have the tools. And that's why, like, when I teach what I teach, I'm very insistent that I'm not teaching some proprietary system. It's not one size fits all. I don't have the answers. I'm just sharing with you collectively what I learned and what are the things that are causing the most damage and the most likely culprits of mental health struggles, and then the basic tools to solve them. And they're just tools in the tool belt. There is no one size fits all. And one guy who's in my class might not need any of it. One, the marriage stuff might really resonate. One guy might be doing this stuff on his own through therapy, and none of my tools work for him because his therapist gives him a different way to do this. But it is a challenge, but it's not an excuse to not offer lots of different tools. You know what I mean? But yes, not one size fits all, but we need to give a lot of tools in the tool belt and at least have a fundamental understanding of the basics. But I do acknowledge the challenge that you just talked about.
Yeah, it's just been really um, Ben Dubin, one of the things that we talked about on here was that don't wait for, again, don't give people turnouts after they got burnt, right?
Yeah.
Ben Dubin had talked about like, why would you wait for the crisis to be able to address the problems beforehand? And I think I had this similar experience with Ben Dubin when I went to his class, not knowing at all what I was going to be getting myself into. And it was like, wow, that was really, really helpful. It was something I didn't even know I needed. And it's like, wow, those things can actually set you up for never getting to crisis. So if you offered that to anybody, it's a no brainer, right? Like if I told you, hey, we have resources for you if you get to crisis, but we also have some things for you that you may not think you need, but maybe you do, and you can prevent ever getting to a crisis. It sounds like that's a lot of like what you're doing or trying to give people the skills for.
Yes, brother, that's exactly what I'm doing, except for the biggest challenge you will ever face in your life, probably humans in general, but definitely firemen, is getting people to be proactive. It's so much easier
Right.
for a doctor to get somebody to lose weight and diet and eat clean when they've had cancer, heart attack, or stroke.
Yeah.
It's like nobody wants to quit sugar until then. Getting a firefighter to process his emotions before the crisis hits
Yeah.
is my biggest obstacle. The tools are there. It's easy to teach and to share. It's getting them to buy in on that. And I kind of like to play towards the rescuer a little bit in all of us and just like, hey man, you maybe you don't ever need this because that's a lot of it. But like statistics will show that 9 out of 10 of your brothers on the job are going to experience one of these things. What if you learn these tools so that you can help them out? Like maybe you're not a TRT nerd, but you can learn every knot and rescue rope thing so that you can rescue a buddy, or like your wife or your children. Have you ever asked them if maybe they're struggling with the communicating with you since you've been on the job? Are
Yeah.
you brave enough to? And if
Yeah.
you hear the answer, would you be willing to learn these things to help them? And um, challenging them without being judgmental, and sometimes modeling it. I think that's why I'm willing to share so vulnerably, because a lot of times, for whatever reason, me telling my story gives buy-in to my peers to kind of go, okay, wow, that went sideways real fast. And if you know me, I was like the happiest dude you know. But that is the biggest obstacle. It's really hard to get people to be proactive. I think Dr. Shukla
Sure.
faces the exact same thing. I've talked to captains who have told me they can't even get their guys to go to Vincier and get a scan. It's free. It's covered. Like we know,
Yeah.
like I don't know the solve to that, but aside from all of us collectively encouraging it and repeating the message and then agonizingly slowly changing the culture.
The culture, I think that's the key word within this whole thing too, is just to have it be normalized. And it's probably having conversations like this to be like, oh, I don't understand this, but that's okay. But being able to introduce the fact that maybe my buddy needs to understand this and be able to get some help. So I think that culture drives everything in the fire service.
Yes.
It's really hard to drive things by policy, and it should, like policy to some degree does. But to your point, like I think when you hit somebody kind of in the gut, that's what is the ultimate motivator, and you start changing the culture. I think Shukla had told us, and Jason might even have more information on this, but I think we got more people screened from when we lost Mock to first 3 months of the year than we did the entire year before combined, because it's cultural. It hit us where it hurt, and it ultimately motivated people to do something that maybe wasn't part of our culture previously.
Yes, definitely. And you're doing that right here.
Yeah. We'll see.
Normalizing
Yeah.
it, talking about it. And you have the biggest, baddest, most rugged firefighters on here crying or talking about their emotions on here. Every clip on Instagram I watch, I'm like, this is what needs to be done. It's too slow for us because we want the change right now, but that is how we do it.
Yeah, for sure.
You're doing it.
Yeah.
We're trying, brother. Just trying to be helpful.
You're doing it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
I would love to hear, and we talked about it briefly on the phone. So, and maybe you can't talk about it, but Payne, when we first talked about how your stuff had made its way into like Hollywood or something like that. What is that story?
Oh, that's no, I could talk about it to an extent. And I don't want to get your hopes up. Mike Payne might be optimistic on where that's going.
Well, he was
but-
just talking about how like this is truly spread like all over the place. So.
This is my big goal. I believe in swinging for the fences on things, and then if it doesn't happen, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I want, if I help one person, that's cool, but I want to help a million, Yeah. But I wrote a book about my experiences, and if it never got published or anything, it was going to be okay, because I got more therapy out of writing that book than I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars we spent helping my family. It was the most cathartic and painful experience, and I'll never trade it. But I ended up landing a literary agent. There are a couple publishers who are kind of bidding on it right now, so it is going to get published. And part of that publishing process was seeking out endorsements, and I got like Nicole LaPera, New York Times bestselling author, like a couple pretty big endorsements, and that's what helped with that. A couple people I ended up reaching out to read it and loved it and endorsed it.
Nice.
And one of those people was one of the actors in 1923. I don't know if you guys have
Oh, yeah.
watched
That's the
that
one.
show.
Now
We
it's all
watch it,
coming
yeah.
together.
And Jack Dutton and Darren Mann, he read my book, and he and I have become friends since then. And he's not only an actor, but he's also a screenwriter. And so he's adapting the book to screenplay, and there's some people involved who are wanting to turn it into whether it's not gonna be like a blockbuster Dwayne Johnson movie. It might be like Netflix streaming or something. I don't know where it's gonna go, but they're doing stuff.
He played the
with
guy
it.
whose wife froze to death, or
He played his brother.
Okay,
The main guy who's like the super handsome hunk, his
Jack-
brother,
Okay, I'm gonna pull up a picture.
Darren Mann, if you look him up.
Darren MAN.
MANN.
Oh, there he is.
And
Yeah.
he has a passion for, he wants to help firefighters, and he's big on mental
yeah.
health, and he's just become
Yeah.
a personal friend. He came to Surprise and did a ride along because he's like really trying to adapt the book to screen, like met my family, want to see where everything happened. And it's coming along. It's being converted into a script, and his people are working on networking, and there's some producers who are interested. I don't have any expectations. I can't even believe I'm sitting here talking to you, or that I'm alive and that I'm helping people. I'm so damn grateful to be doing any one of the 10 things that I'm doing right now. So I have, one of the things that helps me in my mental health journey is I have surrendered all outcomes and expectations to anything, because they were the root of a lot of my misery. So I'm just having fun with this adventure and trying to help as many people as I can and keep myself healthy and my peers at work and my kids, and whatever happens with that happens. I'm trying and I'm working hard on it, but I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's a fun adventure.
So when you talk about outcomes, so you paint a picture in your head how something's supposed to turn out, and then it doesn't turn out that way, and then
That's exactly right. I mean, you have, like in Buddhism, I think it's Buddhism, they call it the 2 arrows. You got the arrow of the first arrow you get hit with is like, okay, I wanted to have $10,000 in my savings account. Now I got $10,000 on a credit card. You're going to get hit with that arrow. But when you have an expectation of it and a ruminating thought and the disappointment and the grief, voluntary arrows being shot into you, And so I have an expectation that my kids are going to turn out one way, and they're going to end up my kid's childhood was rough for all of us. It was emotional dysregulation and trauma and grief. Well, that's going to be painful no matter what. But if I agonize and grieve over what I thought it was supposed to be and what it's pain is real, but we compound our pain with suffering through failed expectations or unreasonable expectations or ruminating thoughts, or just, it is what it is. And you often don't know what's good or bad. I'm not happy that my family suffered and all those people died, but like the reality is a lot of it wasn't bad, and it's doing a lot of good right now.
Yeah.
And so I don't like to label anything good or bad. Maybe the book doesn't turn into a movie, but turning into a movie was going to be catastrophic, and it was going to get weird in my mental health, or I was going to get ripped off. I don't know. I Sometimes you hit a red light and there was a car accident waiting ahead of you if you would have caught that green. And so I
Yeah.
just don't I don't attach myself to any outcomes of how anything should be. I control the variables I can control, and I try and relax and surrender the rest. And that is like a
Mm.
weird concept, but that is the path to happiness. And we have little control over most of that stuff, anyways, other than our responses to things and how we regulate our nervous system and our mind and our thoughts.
Interesting. What are the other paths to happiness?
Knowing what your core values are and really thinking about them and analyzing them, and then acting in alignment with them as much as you possibly can.
Hmm.
If you haven't reflected on what your values are, you might become disintegrated. So I'm going to eat clean and work out this weekend can turn into I just had my sixth piece of pizza and my eighth beer and I didn't work out and I'm hungover and what the heck happened? And now the next day I'm hungover and I'm embarrassed that I told everybody I was going to eat clean and work out. So I have shame and regret. Now you're divided against yourself. You have shame and regret and you're beating yourself up when the world is going to be hard enough on you. But if you know, like, put your core values on your mirror, on your car visor. Okay, fitness, that's my core value. How am I going to act today in alignment with my values? It doesn't mean you'll be perfect,
Yeah.
but if you concentrate on them, or kindness or family connection, if you really reflect on integrity, like if you reflect on what your core values are, and then it's hard, but you make it a practice to act in alignment from them, you reduce that division within yourself, because that's where we get the shame and the regret,
Mm-hmm.
is always when we do things out of alignment with our values. I'm guilty because I screamed at my kids, but I love my kids.
Yeah.
Why am I doing what I don't want to do? There's two versions of myself that
Sure.
are at war with each other. Let's integrate the two. That's one path. I think really digging into what your purpose is and what you can do to kind of live within that purpose within the confines of reality. Like, if I think my purpose is to be the heavyweight champion of the world, that's not going to happen. But like, if I really think that my purpose is to leave my kids, parent my kids better than I was parented, that's an attainable goal, you know? And setting and accomplishing your goals is a path to happiness too. So having little micro goals and being cognizant of what you want to do, and really it comes back to meditation and emotional processing. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And you can redirect and minimize ruminating thought patterns, because your thoughts create your experience, which create your reality. Two things can be true at the same time. This glass is literally half full and half empty. My brain wants to focus on the half empty part because our brain is wired that way. But you can train it to focus on the things that are actually happening, that are where the glass is full. Not trick yourself with three BS grateful things, but the reality is I'm grateful to be sitting here. I'm grateful my kids are alive, even if I have stressors going on. Focusing on the things that are real in your life that are good, while not dismissing the negative, processing and releasing them. There's a lot, but those would be a handful.
Dang. So, what would you say to a first responder or a guy right now who is close to your situation? The world's falling apart around you. Things are going sideways faster than you can even process things. People you love, like your kids and your wife, it's like you can't even fix yourself, and they need help too. And then all of a sudden you're in a parking lot with a gun in your mouth and your finger on the trigger. What would you say to somebody who's literally almost at that point? Like, what if they're listening right now? Talk to them.
Please don't do it. You are so not alone, so far from alone. Please get help. You don't have to carry this burden alone. People love you and want to help you. You're not a burden to anybody. You've helped so many people, and you wouldn't believe how many people would love to show up to help you. Whatever situation you're in, whatever you've done, whatever you think you've done, it's not your fault. Or even if it is your fault, you don't deserve this. There's hope on the other side of darkness. There's joy on the other side of pain. And even though right now in this moment it feels intolerable, like it will never get better, I promise you it will. It will. You can do this. Reach out for help. You're loved and you're not alone.
Jeez, Joe, that was great. Jeez. How do you feel as a human that you have the tools and the skill set now through hard learned experience and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars and counselors? How do you feel now that you're in this position to be able to help others? You've got the mindset, you've got the experience, you had the gun in your mouth, you've got the learnings, and you applied those learnings, and you've changed yourself, and you're smarter, experienced. How does it feel when you get to help someone else now?
I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky. The luckiest guy on the planet.
And obviously that was in you. You wanted to become a police officer and serve your community. You want to be a firefighter and serve your community. So there's always been that part of you, that you want to be there for other people. And now you got these super tools and this amazing experience. Now you can really freaking help people in a whole new way. You're almost like you're a first responder still, but you don't need a fire truck to save people. You don't need a police car to save somebody, and what an amazing position to be in. It's just got to be incredibly fulfilling to be able to help. I know there's a lot of people who were what you were before. You didn't have the tools. You were an adult. You'd think we know how to process grieving and a million things, but we don't, and yet now you're just like this. God, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, so you've got an organization. You're trying to help people. Is it just like a casual kind of thing, or do you have like a program, or if people are struggling, how can you help them?
I train departments. That's what I've been doing. I've gotten, it's awesome. I'm about to serve Arizona Fire Medical, Sun City, Blue Ridge Fire Department, Pine Strawberry, Surprise PD, Surprise Fire. I go in and I do multiple in-person sessions, but you can't learn resilience in one day.
Yeah.
And so I have a whole library of training too, like I shared. So I leave them with a lot of resources, but during that day of training, I share my journey. I share a lot of the tools. I hit a lot of the pain points that everybody in the room is skeptical, but I hit each one of their pain points because I lived it and I am them and I know them. And it's kind of hard not to relate to something I talk about. I share that it's not their fault and it's their responsibility, and here's some tools. And I do it in a way that it's a language my brothers and sisters speak, and it's training in a way that they're used to doing. It's not some psychologist talking to them or whatever, and not that that's bad. I love those guys too, but it's just different. It's training and it's prevention. And then we practice a lot of it together. We go through a dialogue, and not everybody has to talk, but you would be shocked at the conversations that unfold in those rooms. We end with a meditation because I give them a meditation course and I want them to experience what it's like. And again, everybody's skeptical and the whole energy shifts in the room. And it's so awesome when we get guys doing 15 minutes of breathing together, and then leave them with a bunch of resources and come back and do multiple sessions, so I hit all the crews and all the squads and speak at conferences and stuff like that. But that's really one-on-one was getting to be too overwhelming. And I feel like it's too systematic of a process. And so, or it's too systematic of a need, of a problem. And so I have to respect I didn't do this before. I have to respect my own boundaries and what's good for me. And doing groups and making a bigger impact on a broader scale is much better for me. I'm not a therapist. I'm not equipped, nor do I really like one-on-one. I cannot believe how they do it, but I can facilitate a dialogue and get a group of firefighters to talk about their feelings. I don't know why I'm blessed to be able to do that. And so that's what I'm doing now. And that's the big thing.
So what, I don't mean, I'm sure you got questions, but I have 13 more, maybe 18.
I guess I'll call Joe later.
So
please do.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give to somebody like Jason over there who gets a call and it's somebody and they're like, I'm struggling, man. I'm fucking losing it. I think I might kill myself. What should Jason do or say? Because you didn't have the tools originally. You have them now. Maybe Jason doesn't have those tools. Like, what's he supposed to say? Is he supposed to give advice? Is he supposed to just listen? Is he supposed to just point them to professional resources? What is a good path for a person who gets that call? Maybe they're talking to a Joe who's sitting in the cab of a truck with a gun in his mouth.
That's a good question, and I'm going to be really careful with how I answer it because it's like a paramedic. I'm an EMT. I'm not going to try and intubate somebody. There is a little bit of I've been in that position and I've been on the other end of those phone calls. I'm technically not trained or equipped to take that phone call, but sometimes we get those phone calls.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of them myself, and you're not going to turn them down. So if I say anything that's improper per protocol or crisis
We just want to
response,
know what you would recommend.
it's a tough spot to be in. I would say to the person who takes the call, first of all, I'm sorry because it's very emotionally challenging to be on the other end of that phone line. It's our compulsion, and mine especially, to talk in those situations, but listening is the most important part. Empathetic listening and presence for your brother or sister who has a gun in their mouth, your kid who's mentally, emotionally struggling, your wife who had a bad day at work, to share space with somebody and give them your full, undivided heart and mind and attention and empathy, and just listen and let them know that you're here and that you care about them and you want to share space with them and you want to hear what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and then listen. And then instead of talking back, ask them to tell you a little bit more. And then without bullshitting them, because we can read it a mile away, but like empathize, like, holy shit, I can't imagine how bad that feels, but I hear you and I'm so sorry you're going through that. Will you tell me more about that? Tell me how you're feeling. And then once you get that rapport going, nobody wants to be forced or yelled at or lectured, but is there any way I could get you, not forever, but for right now? Will you table this for right now and join up with me? Can I meet up with you? Stay on the phone with them, see if you can get them to a loved one or near somebody, preferably you if you can, but sometimes you're not. You're in another state, happened to me with my cousin. Get them near somebody, but get them talking and listening. Do not muscle them, but try to encourage and ask them. I don't have a great answer for that because I think it's a shitty spot to be in. And I think it's so effed up that we are in that position because we don't have the prevention and we don't talk about it. And I know that that is a valid question, but it's such a rough spot to be in. And it's a rough spot for both people on that phone. It's awful. And that's why we need to talk about this more and get to, because that guy who's on the other end of the phone, if he has emotional regulation tools and practices regularly, and even if he hates it, his department makes him train on it occasionally, he most likely will never get to that point where he's got that gun in his mouth. And that's what I'm trying to do without trying to sidestep that question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And it totally makes sense. And what you said was just great. And I know, because you see on social media all the time, bro check. If you're having a hard time, you can call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and stuff like that. But I wonder how many of us are really want those calls. And you question your ability to even help. It's like, but I think, obviously, like you said, listening, having them tell you more about it are clearly, great things.
Bro check's important, but if you ask any dude how he's doing, he's going to say fine 100% of the time. So checking in or your kids, how was school? Fine. Always.
Yeah.
Tell me the best thing going on in your life right now, bro. You'd be amazed at what you get. All right. Even if you don't have anything shitty going on, just humor me and tell me if you had to put your finger on it, what's the most challenging thing going on in your life right now? And then pause and let them talk. Tell me more about that. Holy shit, your kids are doing what? Like, that's like the bro check. What's the high and the low of your week? Like, you're on shift, you got a booter. Like, what are you loving about the job? What are you finding frustrating? Like, those types of check-ins are powerful, and they have to be normalized though. Peer support, meeting you every 3 months and asking that question. If you don't talk about the little stuff, you won't talk about the big stuff. If we don't do bro checks regularly, if you don't sit around the table and talk to each other, you don't sit around the dinner table and talk to your kids, they're not going to come to you when they're getting bullied. Your firefighter isn't going to come to you if he's not used to having you. We have to normalize the dialogue regularly. Make it normal, because it's awkward at first. It's like breaking the ice and it's tense. It's awkward because we don't fucking know how to talk to each other and we don't do it enough.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben, I didn't
No,
mean
you're
to
good, man.
monopolize the last hour, but I'll let you.
No, you're totally good. I think it's great, man. I think this, to your point, it's talking about it and it's normalizing it, because culture regulates how we act in a fire station. So being able to have those conversations, I think, is going to be key for being able to solve some of these problems. Because I don't think we even know what all the solutions are. I think we've identified the problem, which is the first step in solving one. So I think it's great that we're having these conversations, and I think it's been an eye-opening experience to both of us. Because even when I've talked to people, when we've said, hey, we should bring on some people to talk about this, we should bring on some people to talk about that, you're like, hey, dude, you should call this guy. I'm like, for what? Mental health? Really? Like, he had something going on? They're like, yeah. Like, I had no idea. I would have never thought. And it's like, yeah, that's a great messenger for what's going on, because I think it normalizes it for people to be like, okay, well, if he can have something that's going on with mental health, then it's okay for me to talk about mine as well. So,
Yes, that is so powerful.
yeah. So yeah, it's awesome what you're doing, man, and
Thanks.
it's cool. And it's also, man, the track again with mutual friends and stuff. Because when you talked about Payne, when you had that conversation, I was in a different part of Payne's life as all those things were happening. So it's like really cool to see him to be able to get some help, because and how it's all turned out, because he's awesome.
Oh, and he's crushing it. I'm so proud of him.
Yeah.
He is like taking this stuff so seriously, and he is like, I've never seen anybody grow in their emotional awareness and intelligence and communication skills so fast. He like nerded out on it like me, and he is like, it's amazing.
It's a lot of our personalities, right? We don't really half-ass anything. So
Yes.
if you're going to do it, I'm not just going to casually do this as a weekend warrior on it.
Exactly.
It's like you dove head first in. And it's
Go
been
big or
cool.
go
So-
home.
And that he has done. So yeah, it's awesome to finally meet you and hear more about what you're doing.
Likewise.
And,
Deal
yeah,
with
that's
that.
great.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for sharing what you shared, and thanks for what you do, and to help the guys, man. Just really appreciate you.
Likewise. Thank you guys for sharing space for that, and letting me share my story and holding such awesome space for it and doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
All right, man. We'll have you back on again.